Hello, 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 and welcome to Alexa's Room, where we are not lawyers, we are not medical professionals, we are not law enforcement. We are just people who have opinions about all things going on in the true crime community, including what the heck is going on with the Karen Reed case, because y'all, the saga continues. If you are just catching up to all things going on with the Karen Reed case, on Monday, Judge Beverly Cannoni declared a mistrial after 5 days of jury deliberation. They are deadlocked. They were not able to come up with a unanimous verdict. So we may be doing this thing again. We don't know yet. We're going to be catching up with Yannetti and friends on July 22nd and see where the Commonwealth is at. But at this point, it was announced through a statement to the press that the Commonwealth will be pursuing a retrial. When and where? Who knows? It might overlap with the Donna Adelson case, and my oh my, will that be a trip. So, anyways, let's dive in. What are we talking about today? So, I originally planned for this video to be all about going through the letters between the feds and the DA's office that were released months and months ago, just because I haven't properly sifted through them. And now that we are post trial one, it would be a good time to just further inform ourselves of what exactly was going on behind the scenes, behind the curtains, what kind of information is known or is not known, and what were some of the things and steps that the feds were trying to take in place in order to continue their investigation, or what they thought the Commonwealth should or should not do. So we are going to get into that probably in the next video. I know I keep saying that, but I just didn't expect this news to come. So today we're going to go through this interview that Paul O'Keefe filmed. I guess he filmed this yesterday. This is with CBS Boston, Kristina Rex. I think I follow her on Twitter, actually. So she just dropped this interview earlier today, and this has kind of been the trending news. What if anything on Twitter X? And I haven't seen it yet, so I figured what better place to break it down and go through it than with you guys. And then kind of comparing that to Paul O'Keefe's testimony. So Paul O'Keefe is the surviving brother of John O'Keefe, Officer John O'Keefe, who was allegedly murdered by Karen Reed. That is what the Commonwealth was trying to prove in round one of the trial. And that is what the jury was deadlocked on, is whether or not she murdered him intentionally or by accident, whereas the defense was trying to prove, was it a cover-up? Or not necessarily prove, but prove enough reasonable doubt that, hey, there's some funny business going on and we need to do a little bit more digging, which is why I want to also get into the letters between the feds and the DA. So, but I'm going to keep this video nice, short, and sweet. So we're just going to dive into this interview. Again, I have not seen this video yet, so I can't even preface it with anything. Let's just dive in. All right.
My first question is obvious. Just how are you doing? How's your family doing?
I mean, we're doing all right, hanging in there. It's been a long, painful 2.5 years. And
Gonna probably
the
speak this
mistrial that happened the other day, obviously wasn't ideal, but if we have to do it again, we'll do it again. So we're ready to go.
Did you, prior to jury deliberations, ever think a mistrial was even possible?
I kept everything was on the table, I guess, but obviously hoping and confident that we were going to get the conviction that we were looking for. So as far as a mistrial, yes, it's something we didn't want, obviously, but it's just a bump in the road. And like I said, we'll do it again. We'll do it as many times as we have to.
You'll be back in court every day for another long trial.
Absolutely.
How are your parents?
They're doing all right. That's more of my concern, is that they have to go through this again. I mean, I'll do it 10 more times if I have to.
What's your dad thing?
I hate the fact that they have to
Hold
go
on,
through this all again. We don't know where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen.
We know how Peggy feels.
But, I mean, overall, they're
how's
doing
your
okay.
pops?
And they have John's kids now too, or your sister's kids.
Yeah, so they're living in my brother's house in Canton. Raising my niece and nephew, who are 16 and 13. I wanted them to come down here and live with us, but my niece didn't want to leave Canton, didn't want to leave her friends, didn't want to leave her house, and kind of hard to force a kid who's been through as much as they've been through to kind of shake up their world,
So just a quick recap in case you guys don't know the whole like little background story, just to give you some context. So Paul O'Keefe and John O'Keefe had a sister. The sister passed away, I think through by a brain tumor. I believe that's what caused her death. She got brain cancer, passed away. Then a few months later, her husband, so the children's father, passed away, which is just absolutely like what are the freaking odds? And then I don't want to say shortly thereafter, but not too much later, John O'Keefe was murdered. So now the kids are with Peggy O'Keefe in the same house that John O'Keefe had bought. It seemed like, from the little snippets I had seen, John O'Keefe moved to Canton into his sister's house originally, then then bought his own house in Canton, and that's how. So this is all new information that I'm learning too. So just to give you some deeper context on that.
It's the third time.
Yeah, I mean, can you just talk about Kaylee and Patrick? I mean, they, because we didn't put them on camera or anything, of course.
I mean, and this is like the thing that I'm sorry to stop it, but like this is the thing that bothers me is even during trial, like, so I know during the Ruby Frankie case, which is like a completely different case, very fascinating. If you guys want to check that out, um, that like that's like a whole other beast. But even though the Ruby Frankie case, we know the children based on the fact that Ruby Frankie was a YouTuber and she would film her children, like we knew her children by name because they were filmed for public viewing. When the kids, John O'Keefe's children, niece and nephew, Paul O'Keefe's niece and nephew, testified in court, they weren't filmed, but their names were still like on record, like publicly announced, even though it was being filmed. Like I just don't understand. So their identities were kept hidden kind of, but then their names kept being mentioned, and I just feel like if you're going to say you're trying to protect the children's identities, why are you even saying their names? Because now people, all the sleuths in the world are going to, I would never do this, look these poor kids up. I mean, even in the Adelson trial too, like I know we know a couple, I know we know the one kid's name, Wendy Adelson's kid, but I know she has another child as well too. I don't know what the other child's name is, but like, is it necessary? Do we need to know their first name? Obviously, their last name is O'Keefe, so it's just, or I mean, maybe they go by their father's name. I assume that. I mean, who knows? Who knows? But I mean, it's not too hard for people to track these things down. And I feel like if you're really gung ho about protecting the identities of children, like why do we need to publicize their names? That's just my opinion. So let's continue.
During the trial, I had a lot of people ask me, like, what were they like? And they seemed like, for a reason, very, very strong kids.
They're great kids. They're strong kids. They're resilient kids. They have every excuse in the world not to be good kids. My niece Kaylee, super strong. When asked if she wanted to testify, we told them they didn't have to, and she said absolutely she wants to. She wanted her voice heard, her story heard. Wanted people to listen to her. She felt like because she was 14 at the time that no one wanted to listen to her. So she was strong and insisted on doing it. And my nephew was, he wanted to support her. So he said, if she does it, I'll do it. So I'm proud of them both for doing what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. They were really strong when they got on the stand. It was amazing. Do you feel comfortable telling me, just from all that you've learned over the last 2.5 years, like what you think happened that night?
Oh, we know what happened.
What happened, Paul?
Johnny and Karen were arguing. It was kind of towards the end of their relationship. Things weren't well. They were drinking and arguing and fighting, and in an intoxicated state of rage and jealousy, she just decided that she was going to do something about it, and put the car in reverse and ran him down and left him there to die. And we figured it out as soon as she left the house that day when she came over. We didn't talk to any investigators, state police, nobody. My mother had said, "Do you think she has something to do with this?" And I said, "We're not going to think like that." Went outside to the driveway to look at her car, and her car was gone. It was a blizzard. I knew what the driving conditions were like coming from the hospital to Canton.
Did you know that you could be making life-changing money on Instagram?
Oh my God, these dang commercials, y'all. Sorry about that.
Back to Dighton, which was the driving conditions were like coming from the hospital to Canton. And I knew that they were going back to Dighton, which was a much further drive. Mm-hmm. So we put it together pretty quickly.
I was going to ask you that next. So you took words out of my mouth. It was like, when did you realize? It's literally that morning.
Yeah. So I would say early afternoon when they came back to the house. She wanted to come over and see the kids. Didn't really
because she was essentially like their mom, like their mother figure in all of this. And like, let's not forget too that Kaylee had sent a text message to Karen pretty much saying like, I'm so grateful to see you to have you in my life. And again, like these kids are the victims in all of this. And I don't know if this interview is too soon, but I mean, these are some damning things that he's saying right now. He's saying he pretty much knew from the moment that Karen Reed went to John O'Keefe's home when the family was there to go upstairs. And this was like the whole controversy. She stormed upstairs, spoke to her dad, grabbed her things, and then left. And Paul O'Keefe is essentially saying, well, I mean, that seems suspicious. She didn't want to sit and grieve with us. And I mean, everybody grieves in a different way. I mean, she was the one who saw John O'Keefe, like, before he was yielded away by the ambulance and brought to Good Samaritan. So, like, yeah, I'm pretty sure she, like, doesn't want anything to do with anybody in that moment. And not to mention too, she was on, or she tried to harm herself as well too. Can't use certain words for YouTube because they don't like it. But she tried to hurt herself as well too. So you can't, I mean, I can understand you're all kind of like speculating, like trying to make sense, wrap your head around these things, but I feel like that's very soon to be kind of jumping the gun, especially when this is somebody who was kind of a mother figure in these children's lives. And people say, well, oh, like, Peggy O'Keefe, and it seems from what I've gathered in different research I've done that Peggy didn't really approve of Karen all too much. So could that have been a reason? I mean, we know that she made the statement of to Karen, oh, you just left John O'Keefe, you just dropped him off and left him there, which also makes me question too, like, did she really think that Karen Reed did this? Because why would you make a statement like that? Why would you say to her, oh, you just dropped him off and left him there, even though he's a grown adult and he can go to house parties by himself if he wants to? And not to mention, he's a police officer. Like, it's not like if anybody should be able to, you should feel comfortable, like, putting in a dangerous situation, it's somebody who is law enforcement, correct? So I feel like that just kind of sheds a light into just the different family dynamics as well too, and how they viewed Karen. And I do recall, because I'd be so curious to hear what his father thinks, just the disjointedness of the fact that, I mean, the father wasn't even there every single day in court, I don't believe, or if he wasn't sitting directly next to his wife in a lot. I mean, from what I observed, let me know if you guys saw things differently, but from what I saw and all the testimony I watched when he was there, I mean, it seemed like if he was next to Peggy, he just seemed kind of like checked out. That's just my opinion. Paul half the time was sitting on the other side of not the pew, but I guess of the row. So not even sitting directly next to his mother. So it's just a very interesting family dynamic. And I'm not a behavioral analyst, but I would be curious to hear somebody do a breakdown of this. And if somebody does, I'll certainly pull that up for you guys. But let's continue on. But let me know if you guys also find that a little strange that he was very certain that, oh, because she left the house so abruptly. I mean, I guess you can coin that as suspicious behavior, but I feel like if I had just witnessed, somebody who maybe I do feel guilty about, because yeah, I do feel in this blame part of myself where I did drop him off. I feel horrible that I left these awful messages on his phone, and like, who would have thought that would have been the last time I would have said anything to the man I love. I can't imagine the kind of state she was in. So I can't really blame her for not wanting to be there at that point. And especially when Peggy O'Keefe is already pointing the blame.
Interact with them at all. Was there for probably a total of 30 minutes. Didn't say much or anything. And half of her time was upstairs gathering her things. Then my wife spoke to her on the phone on their way back to Dighton. And she told my wife that just have to remember the bad times. And I don't think I'm ever going to talk to you guys again.
Was that phone call what made you sure of what had happened?
Absolutely, yeah. We already, like I said, we put the pieces together on our own, and that just really solidified it.
Mm-hmm.
Why would somebody say that? Why would someone say, if you didn't do anything, why would you say you're never going to talk to us again?
Probably because you are in a state of, I'm going to off myself, maybe. That's my speculation. But that's the way I interpret it, as like, I don't think because she was close. She was close. She did get along with Paul. She did get along with Erin, his wife. Remember, she asked like, "Hey, can we go out to the bar? Like, just you, not Paul. Like, I can't deal with men." That whole text thread. So she did have a good relationship with them. So I see it more as, I don't think you guys are gonna ever see me again, because I just can't. This is so much, and I'm in this state of self-harm. So that's my speculation, but let me know how you guys interpret that.
Or why do you have to remember the bad times? Almost like justifying what you did.
Right. How would you have expected her to act in that situation if she hadn't done something?
More sad, empathetic, sympathetic. But like I said, when she was at the house, she barely said a word. She wanted to be there for the kids. My nephew came home. My niece was already home by the time she got there, and her family arrived. And I sat down, my nephew in the other room. She sat right next to him. I explained to him that JJ's, something happened and he's no longer with us. She didn't say a word. And right after that, she went upstairs and started gathering her belongings. And the next thing you know, they were gone.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's hard. It's a strange behavior.
Very strange. Yep.
When did the whole narrative of her version of events become known to you?
Well, if you remember her first arraignment in Stoughton District Court,
yeah,
her attorney, David Unetti, had said this is a tragic accident. His client had no criminal intent. Mm-hmm. And then, fast forward to, I guess, when Alan Jackson came on board. And, they teamed up with a blogger to get their story that they concocted. And
there's Turtle Boy.
Flooded out there. And people were only hearing one side of the story and coming to conclusions before actual evidence in the trial had actually begun. So a lot of the
Do you think that Adam Lally proved intent? Because half as far as what I know from what's been reported, it seems like there was no indecision or there wasn't any agreement in terms of like that the jury not agreeing on whether there was intent or not. The murder, the first charge, the count 1 charge of second-degree murder, like everybody unanimously agreed, allegedly. That's the rumor mill. That's what's been reported thus far. That is not where the jury split was. So I'm curious, Paul, like, do you have other information that I just don't, it just does not make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. But we're going to go through all that stuff, all the pretrial stuff.
Was misinformed.
In a different video.
Because they were only getting one side of the story. And, we didn't come out and tell our side of the story, or what we thought or knew happened. We've kept a low profile and have been silent through this whole ordeal. But now it's time. Now it's time for people to understand the truth. And the jurors, we thank them. They did a great job. They put in a lot of hours, paid a lot of attention, worked hard. Unfortunately, they weren't able to come to a consensus as far as a verdict goes. But we have another chance at it, and hopefully the jury that we get for the second time around will we'll see things more clearly.
This AI tool will take your idea
These
and
damn commercials, man. Holy smokes. Sorry, yeah, like what do you think about all that? I definitely kind of jumping the gun.
Just so I'm clear, you think this all started when Alan Jackson showed up, and Karen, throughout the course of this trial, you think she knows what she did?
She knows exactly what she did, and she's trying to buy and lie her way out of this. Refusing to take accountability for her actions. Not only that, but pointing the finger and blaming innocent people.
Yeah, talk to me about that. I mean, because the thing
Please,
is,
Paul.
the story on the defensive side is not just, oh, she didn't do it. It's she didn't do it, and all these other people did.
Yeah, I mean, she's pointing the finger at everybody. Everyone's lying except for her, according to her. I think we had 67
because everybody is lying.
witnesses, testify.
68.
I'm sorry,
That's
testify. And according to them, they're all lying and they're not credible. And
you think Trooper Paul is credible?
Which, I mean,
Can you
as
ask him
first
that,
responders,
Kristina Rex? What did you think
that
of
were just doing
Trooper
their job
Paul's
that day.
testimony?
Jen McCabe, Kerry Roberts, all they did was pick up the phone and help because she was asking for help.
Really?
And according to them,
Really? So then why did Jen McCabe Google house long to die in cold at 2:27, Paul? Why, like, this dude has his blinders on. I mean, it's just, I've said this in my last video too. Like, I believe two things are true at the same time, because remember, he got arrested and charged with an OUI back in 2020, months after John O'Keefe and Karen Reed got together, and rumor has it that Karen Reed allegedly bailed him out. I don't know if that's true or not, like I said in my last video, but I mean, the timing lines up. They were together, so it's possible. And he made a phone call to a family member, and I have to believe that phone call was to John O'Keefe. So I wonder, is that something that put a bad taste in his mouth? Is that why he doesn't like her as much now? I don't know, because if you can recall, and we'll pull up the clips later too, he didn't really say anything too bad about her on the stand. So it's just so interesting to me. Like, I don't know, maybe his mom got into his head, maybe the McAlbert Mafia. I don't know. I don't know. And I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to lose a family member. I can't, especially one that you're extremely close to, especially in just such a tragic way. So I don't want to drag him for that, but at the same time, I mean, I would be more upset that the investigation was completely botched. Like, even if I thought in my heart of hearts that Karen Reed was behind it, just look like it was just disgraceful. I mean, solo cups, Stop and Shop bags. Really? Like, for your brother? I just can't imagine just like sloppy police work, and these are people that you want to associate yourself with.
I'm the only one telling the truth is her.
Right. So I don't even know what to call them. We have a variety of names. The pink people.
The pink.
They turned on all those people first. Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe. But then how have they treated you guys over the course of the last year and a half?
Well, if you just go back to any video of us walking into court during pretrial hearings, yelling, screaming, calling us names, this day I don't know what I did wrong. I get messages all the time, whether through Facebook or other ways of communication, telling me that I'm a moron, I'm stupid, need to open my eyes and all this stuff. But I ignore those. I don't really care what people say to me, because this isn't about me. This is about my brother. and I like to think I know a little bit more of what's going on in the case than people that are just reading stuff on the internet.
Or
And there's been
watching
things
the
said about me,
trial.
accusations about me, all types of things that just aren't true. But again, I just brush it off because this isn't about me.
So if these people buy into this big conspiracy, right, that Brian Albert's a murderer or whoever, okay, if they buy into that, why are they turning on you guys? Has that ever made sense to you?
Because we don't believe in a crazy conspiracy theory that holds no merit, no evidence. I mean, we know these people. I mean, Jen McCabe has been a family friend of ours. She was friends with my sister. We've known her for over 10 years. She was very helpful with, picking Kaylee up to and fro when he took over raising the kids. Kerry Roberts we've known for a very, very long time, right? And at the time, she didn't really know Jen McCabe or any of the McCabes or Alberts. And her testimony corroborated everything that Jen said. And the defense, I think, was scared of her and didn't want to ask her any questions. They just wanted her off the stand.
But what about how long to die in cold?
And
Like, come on.
I guess
Come on, Kristina Rex.
negative or hate
Trust
that's
him.
directed towards me, mostly me and my mother, is because we support these people who are being falsely accused of something they didn't do, right? And their lives have been turned upside down and partially ruined. Colin Albert, who was a 17-year-old kid at the time, his life has been turned upside down and ruined.
Because he's a
I've
liar
gotten
and
to
he
know,
perjured
the
himself
Alberts
on the
through
stand.
all this, and they're all good people.
Oh boy.
So just because we don't believe in a crazy conspiracy theory and we believe that Karen Reed is guilty of killing my brother, they take it on us.
My name is Fanny Texier, and I'm a doc.
I mean, these commercials are killing me, but I mean, like,
Outlook and perspective.
I don't obviously support people hitting him up and calling him a moron. You should open your. I mean, everybody's going to go through the grieving process differently, so I'm not going to encourage that whatsoever. I would never. But I just don't. Paul, you sat there. You were there every day. You heard the evidence. You thought. What did you think of Lally's case? I mean, I appreciate her pressing him a little bit on the Albert stuff. But I mean, it and I get it, it's a dance because it's the victim's family, but still, like, Paul. 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 Did you not once ask Jen McCabe how long to die and call? Like, did you not even, like, in your brain even think about that? Think of asking her, hey, like, what did that, what's about that Google search? Because she was sitting behind you guys during closing arguments. So, like, you could have, and you heard her on the stand. Like, you were there. You never once thought to ask her about that Google search. You can't make up the data, dude. You can't. How do you explain Karen Reed connecting to John O'Keefe's Wi-Fi at your brother's Wi-Fi at 12:36 a.m.? How? Because these are people you know, and, like, that's what happens when you get blinders. Yep, so many blinders to things, and, to go as far and say these people are good people, I mean, again, we got the receipts, like, Colin Albert's a 17-year-old kid, give me a break, he perjured himself on the freaking stand. He was looking for an alibi from his friend, he texted his friend asking if she would corroborate and create an alibi for it. Like, come on now. Come on, Paul. Paul. Come on. Come on.
Doesn't it feel sometimes like your brother's forgotten in all of this?
Absolutely, all the time. It's turned into the Karen Reed show. She walks through a crowd that cheers her on. She goes out in public, takes pictures, signs autographs. She's just living her life like nothing's ever happened. And meanwhile, my brother's been gone for almost 2.5 years. And I just want people to go back to who the victim is in this. It's not her. It's my brother.
What do you want people to know?
Two things can be true at the same time, Paul.
About John? You call him Johnny. Kids call him JJ.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my older brother. So, I mean, generous, loyal, sometimes a pain in the ass to me. I'm sorry, pain in the butt to me.
You can say pain in the ass.
Just because he was my older brother, but he just was there if you needed him. Took care of the people that he loved. Good-hearted guy who didn't deserve any of this. He he rearranged and uprooted his life. Went from a single the bachelor lifestyle living in Boston to moving into instant dad role, and that's something that obviously everyone admires him the most for, and I do too. It wasn't easy for him at the beginning, but he learned to figure it out, and we all helped as much as we could without getting in the way. Just an overall good guy.
And I assume he chose to do that, right? I mean, your sister's situation is unimaginable.
Yeah. So then, after my brother-in-law passed away, we had to figure out, all right, what do we do? And at the time, my wife and I were like, all right, we'll take them in. At the time, we had a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old. So we were trying to figure out how are we gonna do this? Our house was small. We didn't really want to live in the house that they both passed away in, but we were trying to figure it out best way possible. And then Johnny just stepped up one day and just said, I got it.
Wow.
And then pretty much moved in the next day and took it from there for 8 years.
So there's a reason that's why so many people describe that that's what they admired about him.
Yeah. I mean, a selfless act, changing your life, to take care of his family and people he loved. Yeah, I mean, that's him in a nutshell.
I know I asked you how your mom's doing already or how your parents are doing, but I just can't imagine for her losing 2 kids.
No.
Is she like a different person now?
She's a strong woman. I'll give her that. Yeah, it's unimaginable, just to lose them in the ways that she did. My sister suffering for 5.5 months with brain cancer.
Yeah, so it was brain
at least
cancer.
had the opportunity to say goodbye, and then, with my brother just being taken from us so quickly and senselessly.
Agreed.
I know somehow she keeps it all together. My father, quiet, kind of keeps to himself.
We know.
But I mean, overall, what they've gone through is.
What is he thinking?
Yeah.
We want to know.
But they're strong and they keep moving forward, and just same thing. They do what they have to do to take care of the family.
I have to ask you, we got ushered out of the courtroom pretty quickly on Monday. You had a little exchange with Karen. Do you mind? What happened there?
So throughout the trial.
So before we get into this, let me pull up actually this clip really quickly, because I showed this in my video the other day, but I want to pull up the clip just for reference. Let's see if I have it. You literally just have to type that in and it pops up. I think I'm just going to mute this so I can find the clip. But after the judge declared a mistrial, Paul O'Keefe on the way out, as Karen Reed's like hugging her family, he says something to Karen Reed on the way out. Yep. Okay. So I'm gonna play this clip really quick, and then we'll get back into the interview.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you then.
Okay. Paul O'Keefe is here. He's pretty much dressed the same, actually. You can see he's like following Karen everywhere. That's Karen. She's hugging her dad. Just pay attention to the top right corner. A few more minutes. So he's going to walk. That's Aaron O'Keefe. There he is. And boom. So I'm just going to play that back really quick. I can't really hover over the screen, but again, just make sure that you guys can see this. Yep. Okay, cool. So Paul O'Keefe, he's going to come over here. He's going to stop around here, say something to Karen. Obviously, the audio wasn't recorded. And then Aaron O'Keefe, his wife over here, is like, stop that, or like, stop it, is what it looks like. I'm not a lip reader. If any of you guys are lip readers, I mean, I don't know if he's going to say it in the interview, what he said, but he's probably going to paraphrase. So let me know what you guys think he's saying. So you see that? You see Aaron O'Keefe? And look at Karen Reed's reaction afterwards. Right? So again, there's no sound. Paul O'Keefe says something. Stop it. So one more time. Now pay attention to Aaron. Stop it. And then Karen Reed here. Karen Reed's reaction. Just to get the full, like, whatever he said did not sit well with her. And then look at David Gannetti, her defense lawyer, what his expression's like. It looks like he's realizing what happened. Then he asks her, and she's like, yeah, oh, just Paul being Paul. Like, of course he would say something. So that's the exchange that Kristina Rex is referring to. So now let's jump back to this interview. What? Here it is. And we'll just back it up a little bit too.
And do you mind? What happened there?
So throughout the trial, she likes to turn and look at me and smirk. She's never once made eye contact with my wife, Erin. So when the mistrial was announced, she turned and looked right at Erin and gave her a smirk, and then went over and hugging and celebrating to some extent. I just said, you're not done yet.
Did she say something back?
No, but I mean, it was an emotional day, emotional moment, being in that courtroom, sitting so closely.
I mean, I don't know. There's only so much a camera can capture, but from my standpoint, from what I've seen, is a lot of times Karen Reed, when she would like smirk or like make a comment, it would usually be towards the back, like towards her family or to her lawyers. I never once saw her turn her way and look at Paul unless she was looking up at the jumbotron, the jumbo screen when they were pulling up evidence. But that's because the PowerPoint, this projector screen was to her left, so she would have to physically look, and she was very engaged in her trial, very active. So I didn't catch anything. Am I saying, is it true? Is it not true? Is he maybe misinterpreting certain I don't know. But he's saying she was smirking at him and smirking at Aaron, and I didn't see it. Does that mean that it's false or true? I don't know, but that sounds kind of threatening to me. And I think he kind of put it nicely, like, "Oh, you're not done yet." Like some people are reporting that he said, "We're not done with you yet," or something to that extent. So he definitely looked aggressive. He definitely looked a little bit more aggressive, and she definitely, as you can see in that facial expression, she wasn't happy about that. I mean, if you were somebody who's like celebrating, who's like, obviously she's relieved because she gets to go home. She's free for the time being, hopefully forever, but she's free for the time being. So yeah, of course she's going to feel relieved. She's not getting shackled and chained up and thrown into a cell. She gets to go home. So of course she's going to feel relieved and celebrate and hug her family. I don't think that's abnormal. I think anybody would react that way, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that did you guys see Karen Reed smirking at any point at Paul, or do you think he's kind of imagining that or seeing things, or maybe he thought he saw her smirk? I don't know. I'm not saying he's lying. I just don't know.
And that's something that she wanted.
Yeah, can you talk about that? I mean, the courtroom switch, we know all the legal reasons why it happened, but you guys were like arm's length from her for the entire trial.
Yep.
I
guess
mean,
after a while, you just got used to
there.
it. But yeah, showing up every day, sitting that close.
You didn't
the
have to
person that
sit there, Paul.
Took my brother away from us. It was not easy. It took a
Because
lot.
again, Peggy O'Keefe was sitting like all the way over here. Why weren't you sitting next to your mom? Can we ask him that? Because you wanted to
not
stare
say
at
anything,
her.
but again, it wasn't about me. We were there for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to get justice for Johnny.
What did Adam and Laura say to you guys afterwards? Like, what looking ahead?
Yeah, I mean, they were disappointed in the outcome, but like Adam said, he goes, "We're just gonna do it again." He goes, "I'll start tomorrow." So they're confident.
With what, Lally? Oh,
They
God.
have the truth on their side. Unfortunately, if you pay high-powered attorneys enough and put enough lies out there, you start influencing people.
But, like, what are these lies? Like,
point
I
where
want you to
there's
be
no turning
specific,
back.
Paul.
I
Like,
think
what do
people
you
just don't admit
believe
that
is
they
a
were
lie?
lied to.
Help us understand. Show us
But
the receipts. I'm happy
they're
to change
confident,
my
and we're gonna
opinion.
go at it again.
He being Adam has been like, he's kept to himself a lot, similar to you guys over
Yep.
the course of this.
Yep.
Do you think that's been hard?
I'm sure it's been extremely hard on him. He's not the type that looks at social media or pays attention to that stuff. He just keeps his head down and does his
He
job.
should.
Good for him.
He's not the
He
flashy attorney that wants
should.
to be on camera all the time and have press conferences on the stairs like some people. He's just a hardworking, I guess nose to the grindstone kind of guy, and just does his job.
He bakes donuts. He's the donut guy. He's the donut guy.
Very difficult job, but he's never once really complained about it. To us anyway.
Yeah.
I know it's hard on him. I know it's hard on Laura. I know it's been hard on
How many boxes
everyone
of
who's been
cigarettes
involved in
does
this.
Lally smoke a day,
But
Paul?
everyone's determined
You
that
know?
we're just going to do it again.
Has your circle of like the people who support you guys, has it grown? Has it gotten smaller over the course of all the noise outside of this?
So for me personally, I've kept my circle smaller. People that
Wonder
you
why.
were friends with or haven't seen in a while, you just don't know where their mind's at.
Yeah.
What they believe. So we've been forced to become
Interesting.
very kind of like defensive, not as outgoing as we normally would be. But I think recently I think we're gaining some more support. I think people have been afraid, to show up to court and I guess counter protest to the people that are outside.
Oh my God, is he talking about crusty panties?
But I think that's starting to turn. I think people want justice.
I think he's talking
they
about
want
crusty panties.
This influence of social media and public perception based off of lies to
Those are counter protesters.
Do you want
May God
people
help
to show up
them wealth.
with
We'll take all the support we can get. Yeah. No,
Don't say that.
I mean,
Don't say that.
every time we go to court, we're kind of portrayed as the bad guys.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's, we lost a loved one. But somehow we're still.
Now I feel like Paul's making it about him, and now I'm like, all right, like, so on one hand it's about your brother, but on the other hand you're like, yeah, but what about me? I'm the victim too. And like, yes, like, it's sad that, of course, it's terrible. Nobody should have to go through something like this. I don't even think like the worst human being in the world. Nobody should go through this, and nobody is attacking you for that. Everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants, or most people, if they're well-intentioned, want the same things. They want justice for John O'Keefe. We want to know. We believe he deserves a proper investigation, and if that proper investigation is conducted and it's found, that yes, Karen Reed did in fact miraculously strike your brother with her vehicle and that's how he died, then yeah, she should have to take accountability for that. She should go to jail. She should pay that price. But there's no evidence, Paul. There's no evidence. And in our minds, we, justice for John O'Keefe also means justice for Karen Reed. You want to just lock up an innocent person when there's been absolutely no evidence? I mean, innocent until proven guilty, and guess what? She wasn't proven guilty. She wasn't proven guilty. It wasn't even proven that he was struck by a vehicle. So Paul, I get it. We feel for you. We feel for you in the fact that, yes, it's horrible. Nobody should lose a child. Nobody should lose a brother. Nobody should lose a sibling. I mean, you lost two now, and that's absolutely horrible. My heart goes out to you. It really, really sincerely does. But that's not what this is about. This is about getting true justice or your brother, doing a proper investigation, and if all is said and done at the end of the day, and it is proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Karen Reed did in fact murder your brother, then I can bet you, yes, of course, there will be some people on the opposing side because people just like to oppose things. That's just people. But I can bet you there are a number of people who are willing to recant how they feel if that is the case. But it's not. It's not. It's just not. And I feel in a way that he's kind of backed himself into this corner where he feels like he can't, even if he does think differently, is he too prideful to admit he is wrong? Or maybe he could be wrong. I don't know. I'm not Paul O'Keefe. I don't know what's going through his mind. I mean, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure, and I'm sure it's not just from his mom. I'm sure it's from everybody. Everybody in his little inner circle, or even the McAlberts that you've cozied up to. I mean, with Brian Albert, like, how many times have you spoken to that guy? Colin Albert. Why were they there? Why were they there during closing arguments? Okay, you've known Jim McKay for over 10 years. Fine. Fine. You've known Kerry Roberts for a long time. Fine. But where were they the rest of the trial? Where were they? If they're really that I don't know.
I guess vilified for just not believing in a crazy conspiracy.
If you use a trending sound on
Again,
Instagram, that's
these commercials are driving me nuts and I have to get YouTube TV. But again, why what makes you believe it's a crazy conspiracy? Why is it so unfathomable? Why is it, do you just secretly not like cops because you were also, or you, I don't know, or maybe you do. I just don't, I don't understand your thinking, Paul. I just don't. I don't. I just don't.
On that note, was it hard for you at all? I mean, there were certainly some moments in the case where there were weak spots exposed, right? Like I think about the solo cups and
Oh, thank you,
Proctor, who now
Kristina
is
Rex. Yes, let's talk about
facing
this.
job consequences as a result of this. What was it like for you to listen to those moments that weren't necessarily benefiting the state's case?
Well, as far as at the very early stages, I mean, a crime scene during a blizzard,
Yeah,
can't be an easy thing to navigate. And yet, they found evidence. They found a sneaker. They found pieces of taillight. You know, obviously, you're not going to see everything under a couple feet of
What'd
snow.
you think of Proctor?
So I think they improvised the best they could. Every investigation is going to be kind of scrutinized to some degree. But they did what they had to do with what they had, and with the weather conditions being what they were, they just, like I said, had to improvise and do the best they could. As far as Michael Proctor's comments, I mean, he even said too they were unprofessional, which we agree with. But this guy, his life's been ruined. Um, getting his personal cell phone, which was something that should never have happened. Josh Levy should never have been intervened in this.
Now he's bringing up the U.S. attorney. Wow. Okay. He wasn't even prompted for that one. He's just offering it up. Okay, Paul. All right. We're here for it. We're watching. We're listening. Wowza. That was just a lot. I mean, she didn't even ask about Proctor. I'm sure she was going to get to that, but she's probably like, okay, you just keep on talking. But his life is ruined. Proctor's life is ruined. Dude, this goes way beyond this case. This stuff, this crap, this BS has been going on for years and years and years within that department. Within that department. All these crazy shenanigans. What did you think about Kevin Albert? getting so drunk that he didn't remember where his gun and bat. Like, come on now. The kind of guy that Proctor likes to hang out with, and you're like, yeah, no, he made some bad comment, but why? Because you thought it was funny? Because you dislike Karen Reed so much that you think, well, yeah, it was unprofessional, but like this guy's life shouldn't have been ruined. What if your kid was in the same position? Would you feel the same way, Paul? Paul. Paul. Not a good look. Not a good look. Now you're talking about oh my god, I gotta back that up. Now you're talking about that was a lot to unpack in like literally 15 seconds.
This guy, his life's been ruined. Um,
He's been reduced to a dummy gun.
getting
Oh, and by the way, guys, I posted a video on that yesterday. Michael Proctor got his badge taken away, his gun removed, and his car, his wee woo car, taken away as well too. So he's been reduced to a dummy gun. I think he's been like transferred in the meantime. It sounds like desktop duty. If you saw the other guys, Turtle Boy mentioned this during his live stream, and I was like, oh my god, yes, the other guys. It's like the perfect analogy. Now he's like transferred to South Boston, I guess the South Boston Police Department. I'm not really familiar. I'm from New York, so I don't know. But yeah, he's been relieved of his duties. And I guess we'll see. This was only hours after a mistrial was declared. So were they hoping for a guilty verdict? Were they actually going to take action? Were they going to actually do something about this? And was he going to ever suffer consequences, or were they forced by hand because of the mistrial? I mean, it's still people's tax. He's still getting paid. He's still getting paid. The people are still paying him. So I don't know. If I was from Canton, I would not be happy about it. Or if I was from, not even Canton, excuse me, because he's a state trooper, but if I was from Massachusetts, I would not be happy about my tax dollars being spent like that.
getting his personal cell phone, which was
Oh, and I love this too. His personal cell phone. Well, what about all those things that were said about Karen Reed and her medical conditions? Her phone was seized without a warrant, and he was looking for quote unquote nudes. What about her privacy? Are you gonna go now and like say, oh, Brian Higgins text thread too? Come on, Paul. Paul, come on. Come on, Paul.
Josh Levy
Don't
should never
protect
have
him.
intervened in this. An FBI investigation was launched due to cherry-picked evidence or pieces of discovery that was only provided by the defense. Like this is pretty
unprecedented.
To not even
Are you kidding, Kristina Rex? Come on now.
Speak to the Mass Police to see what they have for discovery and evidence. Just to intervene himself in that way, and which casted a shadow of doubt on the investigation. So I think he has a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah. Do you get updates on that?
I do not. I do plan on trying to sit down with him at some point.
Yeah.
Whether I get a knock on the door, I sent him an email, but
Josh
won't get a
Levy?
response. But if I have to go knock on the door and ask for a sit down, that's what I'll do.
Is there anything I haven't asked you about that you want to make sure people know?
Wouldn't you want to know what information the feds have? I would. I'd be like, okay, like you want to why are you protecting these? It seems like you're just like Lally, and you're trying to protect everybody else but find out the truth. And again, I would more than anything, and this is just me personally, and again, I'm not trying to drag Paul O'Keefe. I feel bad, of course. My heart goes out to him and his family for the loss of their brother, their child. However, as people and logic and common sense, I mean, wouldn't you want to know? Aren't you the least bit curious? I mean, I guess if he wants to sit down with them and find out what information, I would want to know. What information do you have? Like, why did you kickstart this federal investigation? Why is that a bad thing? What if it brings you closer to the truth about what exactly happened, when it happened? Because Lally didn't give you any of that. We don't even know when the alleged incident occurred. We don't know. I mean, the closest we have in terms of data of when the murder took place is John O'Keefe's Apple Health data. So aren't you like the least bit curious? Again, it sounds like he is if he wants to sit down with, but why are you protecting these other people? What do you have to gain? I don't understand.
Just in all this, I just want people to remember the actual victim. I think I mentioned it before that it's not the Karen Reed show.
Yeah.
This is about a good man whose life was taken way too soon and for selfish reasons, and has created a void in our life that was already an enormous void, but just made it even that much bigger. And I just want people to remember him and want him to get the justice he deserves and that we deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Karen Reed going to prison.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Christy.
And there you have it. The Paul O'Keefe interview with Kristina Rex from CBS Boston. I definitely think she could have pressed a little bit harder into the Proctor stuff. I mean, he answered it without her even having to ask. It didn't even see that like it was really an edited video or not. So I from what I could tell, I mean, I'm sure it was edited to an extent, but yeah, wow, like just a lot. I didn't know he was gonna drop Josh Levy's name into all of this. So that makes it for a perfect segue into the next video where we are definitely getting into those letters between the feds and the DA's office and why Paul feels like Josh Levy shouldn't have intervened. I just feel like that's a very strong statement. And I wonder, again, like how deep does this thing go? I mean, I don't think obviously Paul is part of any kind of conspiracy of trying to protect the McAlberts. I don't know if he feels kind of some weird allegiance to Jen McCabe because he's known her for over 10 years and maybe that feels like the last link to John. I mean, that's the only thing that I can really speculate from my perspective, but let me know what you guys think in the description below. If you want to watch the full interview uninterrupted without my commentary, I'll link it as well. But yeah, interesting stuff. I'm surprised she didn't press him more on the federal investigation. But I mean, he probably only knows as much as he maybe wants to know. If he only sent him an email once, I can't imagine he wants to dig much deeper. Maybe he just doesn't want to know what. Maybe he doesn't want to know. Maybe he's made up his mind. He feels like now he's backed into a corner and he can't backpedal anymore. But what else I wanted to do, I wanted to go over some of Paul O'Keefe's testimony from earlier in the trial. So now that we've seen his interview, which again just dropped, I think this was earlier today, it dropped. I want to jump over to his testimony where he talks about Karen Reed specifically, and he was never crossed by David Gannetti or Jackson, which I thought was, I thought it was a smart move. I don't think that there was anything really that they could cross him on. If anything, it made them seem more sympathetic. Like, why are we going to cross the victim's family? It doesn't really seem like there's much to cross them on. Anyways, because what information could he possibly provide that would relate to the specific evidence or lack thereof in this case? So let's dive in.
Identify us to where she's seated or an article of clothing.
Yep, she is seated right there between Mr. Giannetti and Mr. Jackson.
So that's a record reflect identification of the defendant by the way.
No objection. Yes.
Now, Mr. O'Keefe, when was it that you first met Karen?
I believe it was Mother's Day, so maybe May of 2020.
Now, prior to that.
So and I'm going to back this up real quick because I want to pull it up again. Lally's asking him when he met Karen Reed. Because remember, John O'Keefe and Karen Reed dated. He's going to say, I think in a couple minutes, back in 2004, he didn't meet her then. Then they broke up. Then they got back together years later, reconnected, and that's when Paul met her for the first time. So he's going to again ask him, when did you meet her? Whereabouts was the time that you guys would have met?
So maybe May of 2020.
So May of 2020, which is interesting because if you remember from my other video, I'm going to zoom in on this. Yeah, I guess I can't. Can't really zoom in on this, unfortunately. But this is the Lakeville police report of when not John O'Keefe, Paul O'Keefe was arrested for, where are the exact charges? OUI, liquor and serious bodily injury and negligent. So and I'm surprised she didn't ask him about this at all, or if anybody's going to ask him about this. So he hit an elderly man who was driving in a vehicle while drinking and driving. So pretty much the same exact charge that Karen Reed is getting charged with, except he didn't do his in reverse, allegedly. He did his in the front end of his car. Operating to endanger, fail to yield right of way. At what speed? You can't make this up. Speed at 24 miles per hour. O'Keefe was later bailed by Claire. So he was bailed very quickly. I think the bail was only set for does it say down here? $540 was his bail. And he seriously injured this poor man. This poor man couldn't like feel his legs or anything. Was rushed to Good Samaritan. Again, like the irony in all of this. Just wild. So this happened in October of 2020. So if he met Karen Reed in May of 2020, then it is very possible that she could have been the one to bail him out. Again, I don't know. I don't have any way to confirm or deny that, but that has been the rumor going around the Twitter cesspool, as Melanie Little likes to call it. So I just thought that was interesting. Again, I went through that entire report in one of my last videos, so feel free to check it out. Again, I will link it in the description below. But I just want to bring that up because, yeah, the timeline makes sense. The timeline makes sense, Lally.
Prior to that, were you aware of any other time when Ms. Reed and your brother Johnny had dated in the past?
They dated very briefly in 2004.
And had you had occasion to meet her during that brief period where they dated in 2004?
I did not meet her back then, no.
And so the first time you met her would have been sometime in the spring of 2020, correct?
Correct.
And what was your understanding as far as when they had reconnected or gotten back together in reference to when you met her?
They reconnected. I believe my brother reached out to her in March of 2020, right at the beginning of COVID. I think he reached out to her via Facebook Messenger and then, text.
And they resumed some kind of relationship, and you had occasion to meet or see Karen Reed over the course of hanging out with your brother at various occasions, correct?
Correct, yep.
Now, about how often would you see Miss Reed? Would it be the same, more or less than when you saw your brother?
Almost the same, maybe a little less. If my brother was just him and I or his friends, but for the most part, he was with Karen.
And as far as your understanding, what was sort of the living arrangements with regard to Miss Reed and your brother?
She has her own home in Mansfield, Massachusetts. She would stay at my brother's house in Canton, I would say 3, maybe 4 nights a week.
And that would be at your brother's house with both he and your niece and nephew.
Correct.
So she practically lived
with regard
there.
to, you mentioned that they reconnected sometime around the COVID-19
Pretty quickly,
pandemic,
too.
correct?
Yes, correct.
And with regard to your brother and the defendant, Ms. Reed, and the children, what was sort of going on as far as school and work with regard to the pandemic, with regard to each of them?
So that was a period of time when schools were closed and kids had to do remote learning. So Kaylee and Patrick were both at home, remote learning, and my brother, didn't have a job where he can work remote, so he had to go into the office. And most of the time, Karen would be at home with the kids during the day while she worked remotely.
Now, you mentioned earlier that your brother had a legal guardian.
And remember, again, that was a big sticking point in their relationship, was Karen feeling like a glorified babysitter with benefits, is how I forget which friend described it. It might have been Carrie Roberts. I can't recall at this time, but that's essentially the biggest sticking point, is that Karen felt like John was kind of taking advantage of her, being able to, I guess, with her flexibility and her schedule, being able to take care of the kids while he was, not, I don't want to say gallivanting, of course, but while he was out working, and then maybe, hanging out with his buddies afterwards. So just interesting to hear it from a different perspective.
With regard to the children, correct?
Correct. Yes.
What, if any, legal status or role did the defendant have with regard to the children?
She didn't have any.
Now, with regard to
I
your
guess
brother and the
Lally's
defendant's
trying to
relationship,
distance
what, if any, conversations did you have with your
from
brother in regard to
the relationship she
the
had
status of
with
their
kids.
relationship or any issues in their relationship?
He didn't say too much. If they were arguing, he might, give reference that they were arguing. Didn't really tell me what they were arguing about, but mostly kept that stuff to himself.
What, if anything, did he mention to you as far as reasons for an argument or sort of points of contention?
He didn't like, if she would spend a lot of money on the kids for gifts, or, I know there was some arguments over, what she fed them, whether it's, Dunkin' Donuts or whatnot, but those things along those lines.
Now,
What a horrible person. What a horrible person. So she treats the kids, spoils the kids, buys them gifts. Okay. So she was probably the favorite. She's probably the favorite. Okay. What else?
what, if any,
What if any?
What if any occasions, as far as they're arguing or anything like that, did you observe personally yourself?
Yeah, I witnessed. So they had rented a house down in Cape Cod. Say that was summer of 2021. I brought my two daughters down for a couple nights, and I witnessed, one intense fight between the two of them.
And as far as the fight, as you're characterizing that, was that anything physical or just verbal?
No, it was a verbal argument.
And what, if anything, was that verbal argument about?
I mean, that's also, so you see Lally, I don't know if that's technically leading, but Lally trying to get it, like, oh, did it ever turn physical? No, nobody ever said that they ever had any kind of physical altercation or anything like that. All of their fights seem to have been verbal and ending with John O'Keefe walking away and Karen chasing after him. So
it's hard to recall. I mean, I guess like typical couples fighting, there was alcohol might have been involved. I recall her complaining that he wasn't nice to her, or something to that effect, and I was kind of the referee in that entire situation.
Now, when you make reference to alcohol involved, is that one or both? Or
Both.
both your brother and the defendant?
Correct.
I feel like Lally's trying to paint Karen Reed as like an alcohol, like, oh my God, she drinks so much. Everybody in this entire case was drinking. Everybody in this entire case, including the minors, were drinking and operating vehicles. So come on now, Lally, come on. And we're not going to go through the entire testimony, but I just wanted to give you kind of like that side-by-side comparison of how he's describing Karen and throughout her relationship with John. I mean, up until this point, I don't get a vibe like he thought she was this terrible person. They were just going through normal couple argument. He literally said normal, typical couple arguments. So how does that translate into motive for murder?
I could turn your attention to New Year's, and specifically New Year's Eve, going from 2021 into 2022. Recall that time?
I do.
And do you recall where you and your family were for that sort of New Year's?
What about that OUI?
Yeah, so I was with my wife and her family. We went to Aruba the day after Christmas
This is
in
the
celebration
Aruba
of
story.
my wife's mother's 70th birthday.
Mr. Lally, does it make sense that I give an instruction at this point? I'm going to see counsel at sidebar.
All right, so they're gonna go sidebar. I just want to hear what he has to say about. So I actually didn't see all of Paul's testimony, so I am curious. We're not gonna go through all of it. If you guys want me to watch, to do an entire video on Paul's testimony, I'm more than happy to. I want to dig into some of the prior testimony, like Tully's and the McCabe's. obviously the Alberts as well too. So let me know if you guys want me to do a video on that. But I know for sure the next video is going to be on those letters between the feds and the DA's office. But I want to hear what he thinks about the
So during that New Year's Eve, you were in Aruba for your wife's mother's 70th birthday, correct?
Correct.
And was your brother, Johnny, was he also in Aruba around that same time frame?
Yes.
And your resort and your brother's resorts, where were they in relation to each other?
They were pretty much on opposite sides of the island.
And at any point in time when you were in Aruba, did you see your brother at any point?
Unfortunately, we did not.
Now, you mentioned that you were there with your wife and your children. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you know who your brother was in Aruba with around that same time?
He was with Karen Reed and brought the kids. So Kaylee and Patrick were with him. They were also with a large group, many other couples and families.
You know who was sort of the primary organizer of that group that your brother was with?
Yes, a friend of ours, Lars Sullivan.
So then, like, why is this relevant to ask him, Lally, if he didn't see? He just said he didn't see his brother while he was in Aruba. So what? Like, what? Why? This is such a waste of time.
And how did you know Laura Sullivan?
So now they're gonna get into the Laura Sullivan stuff, but I mainly wanted to break down again, just like him talking about Karen Reed and what he observed during their relationship. And as far as from what we saw, I mean, he said John O'Keefe seemed to be upset mainly at the fact that Karen Reed was spoiling kids, getting them gifts, getting them Dunkin' Donuts. John O'Keefe, being the parent now, stepping in, probably didn't like, hey, they got to eat healthier, don't spoil their appetites before dinner. Normal couple stuff. This is the same stuff that I actually argue with my wife about all the time too. I always tell her, like, don't spoil your appetite. I'm about to cook dinner. So totally typical couple stuff. So it's just interesting to see that flip. And even when he's taking the stand, he's still hardcore believing that Karen Reed intentionally killed his brother. So I'm just so, and not even, he thinks it's an accident. Maybe he had that thought. Maybe he felt at some point that it could have been an accident. And then I don't know what shifted in his brain to, yes, it was a full blown intentional murder, that she had to kill John O'Keefe for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know how that switch flips in your head. I mean, I guess stuff like this can drive you mad, especially when you don't have an answer to things. So I'd be curious to see if he does end up meeting with Josh Levy, and what if anything comes out of all of that. So that wraps up today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I know this is a heavy topic, of course. I mean, and I just want to say before we wrap things up that my goal is not to drag a victim's family in any way, shape, or form. However, I do think that two things can be true at the same time. I think that there's a lot, I don't know. We don't know Paul O'Keefe personally. I don't know him. I've never spoken to him. I've never met him. I don't know him. I don't know his family. I just don't know. I don't know what's going in his mind. But I do think there's a lot of interesting coincidences, and I don't necessarily like the fact that he's kind of defending Proctor in a weird way. So that was kind of interesting. Maybe he'll change his tune. I don't know if more evidence comes out from the federal investigation. Maybe he'll be singing a totally different song in a few months' time. I just don't know. But if you like today's video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you never miss another video from me. And like I said, the next one coming up is going through those letters between the feds and the DA's office. So you're not going to want to miss that. Make sure you hit the like button as well too, because that tells the YouTube algorithm that this is news that's important, that more people should be hearing about, because we got to keep the story going. The Karen Reed saga is not over. She's still fighting the good fight. Just because there was a mistrial declared doesn't mean that the news is over. We got to keep reporting on it. We got to keep the story alive. We got to make sure that the story reaches out to as many people as possible, and that at the end of the day, there is justice for John O'Keefe, and there is justice in our system, and justice for Karen Reed. And if you want to make a donation, I'm including her defense fund link in my description as well too. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.